So, hello and welcome to the session, Healing um, Healing Circle for Black Men. I am Rain and a Black mental wellness mentee who will be supporting this session today. I would like to introduce our speaker, Tariiq Walton, and also John Hart, but he is having technical issues getting on here. Um, Tariq Omari Walton is a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist and the director of Insight Marriage and Family Therapist, LLC, a graduate of the University of Maryland's Couples and Family Therapy Program. Tariq specializes in couples work with a particular focus on mindfulness, communication, problem solving, emotional regulation, and building intimacy. Currently, Tariq co-hosts the Kings of the Heart podcast with fellow Dr. John Hart and hosts and produces the Insight Guided Meditation podcast. In 2014, Tariq was named to the Prince George's County Social Innovation Fund's 40 Under 40 in the category of Arts and Humanities. The author of 4 books, including the relationship tome, Is Just a Damn Date Why We Expect Too Much Too Soon. Tariq is a sought after lecturer, panelist, and media personality who is also a contributing writer for marriage.com. Tariq also facilitates the Shape Up Barbershop Talk series for the community-based organization, starting with Today, a monthly discussion forum held in an actual barbershop in an underserved Washington, D.C. neighborhood. The purpose of the series is to provide tools to Black men in the community to better deal with troubling relationships, mental health difficulties, emotional regulation, trauma, and more. For Dr. John Hart, who is not able to enter the presentation today due to technical issues, he is a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist. Dr. Hart received both his doctorate in family science and his master's of science in marriage and family therapy from the University of Maryland at College Park. Clinically, Dr. Hart is a senior therapist and public relations manager with the Relationship Counseling Center of Maryland and Columbia, MD. Dr. Hart is also the co-host of the Lively Radio podcast on couples relationships, Kings of the Heart, with his colleague Tariiq Omari Walton. Dr. Hart's family science research focuses on the transition into adulthood for young men of color, the impact mass incarceration has on Black fathers, and the re-entry experiences of young Black fathers as it pertains to jobs, communities, and their children. Dr. Hart's work and experiences have involved improving prison and jail family space conditions for men to interact with their children, program evaluation to improving re-entry centers in the communities, and reducing relationship conflict between Black fathers and the families and mothers of their children. Dr. Hart is also a prominent adjunct faculty at the University of Maryland, College Park, teaching on privilege, social position, affluence, and poverty, and structural inequalities. Please welcome Tariiq Omari Walton and John Hart. Thank you.
Okay, I just saw your lips stop moving, so I'm guessing it's my turn to go, right? All right. I would say wonderful introduction. I didn't hear any of it, so I just saw lips moving and I couldn't read it, but we can go ahead. Thank you, Rain, so much. My name is Tariiq Omari Walton. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I have 2 offices, one in Largo, Maryland, another one in Silver Spring, Maryland, where I primarily work with couples, and I also work with a lot of Black men. I have a lot of Black men that I see individually as well as in couples. I also do a barbershop talk that I'm sure that Rain mentioned that I had this morning, where I'm in the barbershop with my microphone and my speaker and my recorder, and having conversations with Black men around mental health, relationships. And today's topic was about the circle of love that Black men typically don't think about or may not consider. And we're talking about your community, whether it's your family, your friends, your significant other, the spaces you find yourself in, and really thinking about what it means to be loved and to give love as Black men. Even so far as, can you say I love you? Or are you used to hearing people say I love you to you? Can you tell other Black men that you love them? So we have those kind of conversations, great conversations this morning. You can always go to the Starting With Today is the organization that I work with in doing that, working with the Black men in the barbershops. And they have a podcast that you can see on, check out on all streaming platforms, and you can actually hear that conversation as well as other ones that we've had in the past, hopefully by next week. But anyway, today we are doing the Invisible Man Healing Circle for Black Men. I'm supposed to be here with my partner, Dr. John Hart. We are known as the Kings of the Heart. We have a podcast that we also do where we focus on relationships specifically. We are two licensed clinical marriage and family therapists. As Black men, we are very rare in that particular field. In the state of Maryland, I think there may be 5 of us who are licensed total. Just being Black men who are therapists is rare, but even more rare to find licensed marriage and family therapists. And so we do a lot of discussions around all sorts of relationship topics. But today we want to talk to you about what Black men tend to be going through, what we're going through right now, what we need to do to better heal, to be more mindful, more emotionally aware and connected, and just talk to you a little bit about what we do in our practices. But unfortunately, John was not able to log on. Something happened with the system, so I'll be doing that myself today. So let me start with, okay, how come I can't move forward here? Wow. So let me see. I'm trying to move to the next page and it's not letting me go there. So let me go back here. All right, just to give you a little background about what Black men are going through right here. I don't want to read these all the way through, and we were running short on time, so I want to give you some of the bulk of the information. But as you can see, Black men face a lot of disparities in relation to mental health and very poor outcomes. Unfortunately, you'll find that a lot of Black men do not trust the mental health field, much more they don't actually, we have a hard time trusting doctors and the medical field overall because of a lot of historical reasons. And so, there are a lot of disparities when it comes to Black men in our community around seeking and getting treatment when it comes to mental health. There are a lot of issues when it comes to Black men dealing with both police and the services by the police and dealing with the criminal justice system. We also are 5 times more likely to be given diagnosis of schizophrenia, experience longer compulsory hospital care. There's a lot that goes on with us. There's so many Black men that are dealing with not just mental health disorders. Things like depression, anxiety that go undiagnosed all the time. But we are doing the work trying to get more people diagnosed and getting the help they need. So when you think about the dynamics shaping Black men's mental health, we have the micro level, which of course are politics, laws, economy, racism. Then we can look at the micro level, where we break it down to the neighborhoods, their environments they're growing up in, that they're living in, they're functioning in and working in, and then also the health disparities. Interpersonal issues, we have coping skills that that a lot of us lack, a lot of Black men tend to lack. So we have some healthy coping skills that we may tap into, but there are a lot of unhealthy coping skills like drug use, particularly around marijuana and alcohol, using sex as a coping mechanism, sometimes violence. All those things are different coping mechanisms that aren't necessarily healthy that we are engaging in. In terms of dealing with identity, Black men tend to really try and tap into that sense of masculinity and try and have very clear gender roles. But we find that Black women tend to be a lot more egalitarian, whereas Black men tend to be a little bit more traditional. Even though Black women have always worked and Black men have just been contributors, not always have been the main breadwinner, but that tends to still be a problem for a lot of Black men. We have a really hard time both being able to just contribute without the idea that we are the main, if not sole breadwinner. And also we're dealing with a lot of emotional awareness or lack of emotional awareness. And we're really trying to, the work that John and I are doing are trying to get more Black men in particular to be more emotionally aware. On the interpersonal level, you have the family of origin issues that a lot of us deal with, relationship issues, and then we have to think about, what it means to be a father and dealing with fatherhood. This part right here is always interesting to me. Again, John and I are licensed therapists, and we do this work. We see clients all week long. We've been doing this for years now. But you have a lot of social media influencers out there who aren't necessarily therapists, who are giving a lot of their own opinions, a lot of their own thoughts about what it means to be in relationships, what it means to be Black men, what it means to be Black women. And they're not, I don't want to say they're not qualified, but they don't have the research background often enough to give good advice and good, you know, practices. Just a lot of complaints, and you notice some of these people on here. You probably recognize a few of them. And this, of course, has implications on mental health providers because you have a lot of people who are dealing with interpersonal issues based off of some of the advice they're getting from some of these social media influencers. But they can't replace therapists. I'll tell you that right now. Here, I don't want to go through all this, but here are some of the experiences that we've had working with Black men. Like I mentioned earlier, I do barbershop talks. John also does barbershop talks. We both come from an academic background, working on college campuses, being lecturers, being professors. John has done a lot of work in the jails. It's funny enough, he actually works with the inmates around fatherhood and manhood. I've actually done a lot of work with the staff. We used to be a staff counselor for the Prince George's County Jail. So I worked with the staff. He's actually worked with the inmates. We worked in community centers. I mean, just everywhere. We obviously in therapy rooms, but we make sure that we're connecting with Black men just about anywhere we go. We know how important it is to create safe spaces for Black men. When you talk to Black men and help them really understand why they may struggle with being able to express themselves, they'll acknowledge that they have very few safe spaces. And if you can think about what it's meant to be a Black man in America throughout the entire 400 years that we've been here, you'll begin to understand why we tend to feel so unsafe. You know, when you take it back from being taken from the continent, issues dealing with the Middle Passage, slavery, you know, throughout the entire American history, we've had, what's it called? Consequences, major consequences for expressing our emotions, mostly coming from, the people that we're being, ruthlessly enslaved by, but also in our households. So whether it's, with our significant others or our parents, being out on the street, dealing with our friends, there have been very few safe spaces for Black men. And we tend not to be able to feel safe to be able to talk about what our emotions are. In terms of dealing with trying to get to the healing part, it's really hard to define healing for Black men sometimes because it's like we often have not thought about what that is, what it means to heal. We don't even recognize that we need healing. It's just like, hey, I'm just doing what I have to do. And there's this numbing that a lot of us have kind of subscribed to that has not allowed us the room to even consider that there is healing that needs to be done and that there's a way to do the healing. We also have to do a lot of reframing and work with Black men around and feeling empowered and that they can actually make changes, that they are the agents of their own change. A lot of times we don't think about that. Our thing is like we just try and get by. We kind of keep our heads down and just push through. But the lives that we're living don't have to look the way that they do. And we often have to open up the way that we're seeing the world and begin to approach things differently, really challenge the beliefs that a lot of Black men have and recognize that there's a whole other world out there that you can be exploring if you just give yourself that opportunity. Do a lot of skill building between integrating new skills, but also taking skills they already have and working from a strength-based place to help Black men be a little bit more, attuned to being able to be those change agents I just mentioned. But I do want to move on because I know we're going to run out of time before I can get through this. So if you have any questions, please go to the chat. I can't see the chat right now and I can't hear anyone speaking for some reason. But if you have anything in the chat, I'm gonna go scroll back through. I'll answer your questions. If you have any of your own thoughts around this, please feel free to share, and we'll just continue on. Some of the things that John and I work on very specifically, like I mentioned at the top, is emotional awareness. When we break down what it means what the topic of emotional awareness really is, it's emotional intelligence, which is, we talk about that IQ, right? And emotional intelligence is specifically how aware are you of both what you're experiencing and what other people are experiencing. What are those emotions? And not just those primary emotions, but not just those secondary emotions, but those primary emotions. And a lot of times, the things that Black men tend to be tuned into are the more negative emotions. We're very aware of our surroundings, but from a place of danger, and keeping in tune with what's happening in our immediate vicinity, but not from a place of positivity. Oftentimes, we're usually just watching our backs. So it's a matter of tapping into that sense of emotional intelligence and expanding the awareness of what's going on around you and the people that you're connecting with. Then we have emotional literacy. Emotional literacy is specifically being able to name the emotions you're experiencing. I can't tell you how often I'm sitting with clients and I'll ask them, okay, well, when you experience that, how did it make you feel? And they're struggling to find the words. I have charts that I give them, and they still struggle sometimes to come up with the words. And I have to kind of push them along and prod them a little bit to help them find the proper terminology to explain what they're experiencing. There's so many situations, whether I'm talking to mothers or in front of classrooms, where people are acknowledging their literacy, their vocabulary for expressing emotions is so small. We use things like, mad, sad, angry, but oftentimes what people don't realize are those emotions that we're expressing, whether we're expressing them verbally or physically, through reactions, are secondary emotions. Sadness, anger, fear. Those are all secondary emotions. And I say that from the standpoint of we use those when we can't think of the primary words that we're experiencing. So, I'm angry. Well, are you angry or are you disappointed? Or are you frustrated? Find the actual words to describe what you're going through so that people can actually understand you better. And when you think about what sadness is, when you think about fear, love, joy, all those things, anger, those aren't really emotions. Those are states of being. So you can think about secondary emotions from the standpoints of being states of being. Okay, so if you're feeling joy, what are the actual emotions that you're experiencing that give you a joyous feeling or experience? Okay, and so it's very important to help people expand on their emotional literacy so that they can actually name the emotion they're experiencing. We often have to help people deal with especially Black men, deal with the reactivity. So if you're angry, well, if you're showing your anger through rage and rageous, behavior, how can anyone really understand what you're experiencing? And that's the way a lot of us to communicate. That's probably the one place where Black men feel safe, being able to express anger and rage. But that has two effects. One, it keeps people at a distance from you. So when you're angry, no one can get close to you. And that might be your plan. You don't want anyone to get close to understand what's going on with you because you don't feel safe. But you understand by expressing that anger, you're keeping that gap between you and other people. The other problem is no one understands what you're actually going through. So if you're just expressing anger all the time, okay, well, how do I know what to do or what I'm doing to set you off when it's just the same emotion that you're experiencing or you're expressing? Okay, so that sense of emotional reactivity, and that reactivity is that instant response where you're not even considering how to regulate the emotion, but you're just going off. Well, we need to help people better understand what they're experiencing and that there are better ways to express it than to just react. Because when you're reacting, oftentimes you're only expressing that secondary emotion, and that primary emotion is not being made aware. You're not helping people be made aware of that. So people aren't understanding what you're going through. They just see that anger and they keep their distance. Well, if you want to build better bonds and better relationships, you need to be able to tap into that primary emotion and find a way to feel safe enough to express it so that you can build stronger bonds with people. Emotional well-being is so key to feeling healthy. We have the 8 dimensions of wellness that we really work with our clients on. And I saw some people talking about some of those 8 dimensions earlier in some other sessions. But that emotional well-being is probably one of the things that helps you stay balanced within everything else. Because if your emotions are not in tune with your reality, well, everything's going to be out of balance. So the more emotionally aware you are, the more emotionally healthy you are, the better those other 7 areas of well-being will be maintained. So you want to make sure that you're doing the work necessary to be emotionally well. And again, the thing that ties it all together is your perspective. I call it kaleidoscopic. When you think about a kaleidoscope looks at one single light and through the many lenses is able to express many different colors. Well, it's the same thing with perspectives. Oftentimes we're coming from one perspective and that's the only thing we're considering. But there are so many different perspectives that people have. We're not all seeing things or experiencing things the same way. And so by being able to consider other perspectives, it helps you better understand what people are feeling and why they're feeling it. And now, again, you're able to communicate with each other from a different place. You're able to understand each other from a different place when you're able to consider other perspectives. But in order to do that, you have to challenge your own beliefs. You have to open up your lens or use many different lenses in order to see where other people are coming from. And there's the possibility. You don't have to say it's true. And it doesn't have to represent your perspective or change your perspective. Again, it's all about understanding. And that's all we want to do when it comes to that sense of social, emotional well-being and wellness. The second part of working with, the social emotional wellness, moving beyond just the awareness, but the different parts of what it really means to be emotionally connected to people. So you have this sense of emotional intimacy and those emotional bonds I just mentioned. Intimacy we like to break down to be not just the physical intimacy or sexual intimacy and intercourse, but spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, and intellectual intimacy. Those are the 4 areas of intimacy we really do a lot of work around, and recognizing that they all feed into each other. So the better your sense of spiritual intimacy and intellectual intimacy, the better your emotional intimacy. The better your emotional intimacy, the better your physical intimacy. And that's something we often work with our clients on. In order to, again, make sure that you are being validated, that you're being understood, you have to first feel safe. So emotional safety is probably the key to all of this, especially as clinicians. I also do lectures with clinicians a lot, social workers and other therapists around working with Black men and how to create a safe space for Black men. Because often, like I said, we don't feel safe. But that emotional safety is key to getting Black men to open up and to express what's going on. What we often do is, as clinicians, we'll go in there with this top-down authoritative approach to working with Black men, and that doesn't work. We're going to be resistant to that. And so it's better to go in with a sense of curiosity, a sense of compassion, and a lot of questions, and let them guide you through their experiences instead of coming from this authoritative place and telling them what we need to do. That's where I think a lot of clinicians go wrong with working with Black men. Emotional vulnerability, resilience, and fragility. These are all areas where, Black men tend to struggle. We don't have, even though we may be very resilient in many different ways, there's a lot of fragility there, particularly around our egos, our understanding of manhood and masculinity, and we can be hurt very, very easily. And so there's a difference between being vulnerable from the standpoint of expressing yourself so that people can understand where you're coming from, and being vulnerable in terms of being weak and being able to be taken advantage of. And that's the part that a lot of Black men tend to focus on. I don't want to be vulnerable because I don't want to be hurt. Well, if you are more emotionally resilient, meaning you're able to withstand and adapt to whatever the circumstances are so that you can continue on, the more resilient you are, the less room there is for you to be hurt. Yeah, you'll experience those different emotions, but the intensity of the emotions won't be as great the more resilient you become. Another thing is, when it comes to communication, recognizing how important it is to be assertive and not just aggressive, which a lot of Black men can be either aggressive or passive. I get those a lot from a lot of my clients. Either they're very passive where they don't want to speak about what's going on with them because they're just trying to keep the peace. I just want to keep the peace. Not recognizing that you're not really keeping the peace. You being quiet, you being passive is all that's doing is making you become more resentful. When it does come time for you to express yourself, you're just gonna blow up. So there's no room for passivity, but there's no room for aggression either. When we talk about being assertive means being able to express your thoughts, which are important for you to do, without um, necessarily harming anybody else. That's where the aggression comes in. So being assertive, you talk about how you're feeling, what your experiences are, why you feel the way that you do, but you're also thinking about the way that you're communicating, making sure that the person you're speaking to isn't going to be unnecessarily injured by the words that you're using or the tone that you're using. So we work with a lot of Black men, teaching us, how to be more assertive in our communication and less passive and less aggressive. Learning how important it is to not only look for validation in what you're experiencing, but to also validate others. There are so many brothers I talk to who will straight out say, as we're talking about validation, recognize, yo, I don't validate anybody. I don't want to say it's a very selfish way to look at the world, but they only look at things through their own lens sometimes. And so they struggle with being able to understand things from other people's perspectives, which means it's going to be really hard for them to validate other people's feelings and their perspectives and their experiences. So working with Black men around validation, both validating themselves, looking for validation, and more than anything, learning how to validate to other people. Compassion and empathy, this is top tier here. So once you can get to the point where you're validating, well, now you can empathize with people, meaning that you are expressing and understanding from their perspective. You're not just caught into only how you see it, but you're helping them to understand or showing them that you understand how they're experiencing things through their own perspective. And then you have to talk about compassion. Compassion and empathy go hand in hand. So not only am I showing you that I understand, but I'm listening to you and I'm demonstrating care to you without judging you. And one of the things that make people feel so unsafe is that sense of judgment. But if you're actually able to be compassionate towards somebody, well, that judgment is gone. And now they feel safer and they can express themselves. Even if it's something they know that you're not going to like, they feel at least safe enough to express it to you, knowing that you're going to understand it and hopefully be able to work on it. We talked about reactivity and impulsivity, but that goes as well under the social emotional wellness in this section. And again, talking about healthy coping mechanism is key. Some of the ways that some of the healthy coping mechanisms that we do are calming and mindful breathing. I do a lot of work around mindfulness and meditation in particular. I actually have a guided meditation podcast that I do that you can find on Spotify called Insight Guided Meditation. But mindful breathing, I have actually on my alarm every day at 11 o'clock goes off to remind me to breathe, just so that I have a moment to kind of reflect and relax and calm down. So if you tend to be very reactive, learning how to breathe through the moment can help you slow down enough that you're no longer being reactive. It gives you time to consider what you're feeling and how you want to express it. So teaching Black men how to just calm down through mindful breathing and thinking through how they want to express themselves. Visualization is very important too. So, you can see here, breathe in for blue, for calm, or, green for balance. So you're actually imagining particular colors while you're breathing because those colors help you get to whatever it is that you're aiming for, right? And also, one of the really helpful coping mechanisms are physical activity, getting out, doing things to just get your body moving. And so you get those endorphins, moving along and getting that adrenaline pumping so that you actually feel better. When you work with people with depression, that's a major thing. Get up, move, do something. You're going to feel better once you do it. If you can push through that voice that's in your head saying, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not gonna feel any better. Get past that voice and get your body moving, you're going to feel better. So these are some better coping mechanisms than some of the things that we're already doing. And these are some of the major things we work on with our clients. During our podcast, we have something we call the Noble Truths. These are some bullet points we like to just highlight about the conversation that we're having. So this is pretty much the conclusion. So as Black men doing emotional work, we want to make sure that we're creating safe space and safe environments where Black men can be vulnerable and communicate openly without judgment. We want to make sure that we're learning or we're teaching Black men how to validate their own feelings as well as those feelings expressed by other people, and especially their loved ones. You have to expand your vocabulary. You have to find those primary emotions. And, when you're working with those, it's so funny because when you're working with people for a while and you've been doing that work and they start articulating emotions that, you've never heard them say before, it's almost shocking. It's like, oh, where'd you pull that from? You feel so proud at that moment when your clients, particularly Black men, are able to articulate more emotions than what the standards tend to be. We want to make sure that Black men are increasing their awareness of their emotions that they're experiencing and those experienced by others. Recognize when you are being emotionally reactive and not regulating well. That regulation is everything. If I didn't talk about that enough, I apologize. But learning to be better regulated in your emotions. You can feel what you're going to feel. You can't get past that. Your feelings are your feelings. But making sure that you're not expressing them in a way that's damaging others is important. So being able to regulate those emotions, find the primary emotion that you're feeling and articulating that without necessarily hurting somebody else. Learn to be empathetic, compassionate, and more than anything, patient. Be patient with yourself and be patient with whoever you're interacting with. Practice a sense of mindfulness. I didn't get too deep into that, and we're gonna run out of time, so I don't want to get too deep into that. But again, you can check out my podcast and I get more into that, and John and I get into that in our podcast as well. And learning to communicate assertively, not aggressively, and definitely not passively. So, these are just a few other things for you to consider. Anyway, that is the end of the presentation. I'm sorry if it felt rushed. I'm sorry that Dr. John couldn't be here, but I'm glad that you were able to check out a little bit of this. Oh, you know what? Please say it went through. I just realized that it might not have even. Oh. All right. All right. So you probably heard everything I said, but didn't see a single slide I put through, did I? Did you? Anyway, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, technical difficulties. I'm just seeing that now. But hopefully, I don't know. Just get in touch with me. You'll find the information. Yeah, I don't know. You can find the information on the website for the conference. I want to thank everybody for having me here today. If you have any questions at all, please add them to the chat. I'm going to go back through to see if there's anything that I missed other than the fact that you couldn't see anything. No, I guess not. See any of the slides changing. But hopefully you got something out of it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rain. Yeah, please, if you have any questions at all, this is your opportunity to ask. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Phyllis. All right, here we go. Joel Guy. How do you differentiate assertive versus aggression for your clients? Again, kind of what I said earlier, making sure that when you talk about being assertive, that you are expressing your emotions, expressing your thoughts, expressing your feelings, but keeping in mind how the other person's going to receive them. So many people get caught up in just saying what they want to say and not thinking about how it lands with your audience. You always have to keep your audience in mind. So it's about keeping that audience in mind and making sure that whatever you're saying will land the best way it can. That doesn't mean that people are always going to like what you have to say, but at least to be open and receptive to hearing you, as long as you're not talking in much more harsher tones or using language that can be perceived as being hurtful. So, that's the difference between the assertiveness and aggressive conversation. Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. We can email, make sure that Rain has the slides, and hopefully they can send it off to you. You can contact me at Tariiq. You see how my name is spelled? Tariiq at tariqomari.com. And I don't have John's information here either, but he's a fantastic resource. But again, Tariiq at tariqomari.com. And you can reach me at, there you go, that's it. Spelled it right. Thank you, Richard. Good looking out. And my number is, I guess I could type in the chat, can I? All right, Richard, I look forward to hearing from you. All right, any more questions? All right, if not, I want to thank the group for participating today and listening in. Sorry there was nothing for you to see other than the main screen. I look forward to speaking with you guys again, and hopefully we can, have a great conversation and keep doing this work. All right, you guys take care, and thank you, Rain. Appreciate everything.